Good day to all. Now, let's get caught up on the antitrust case since there wasn't much excitement in court. We're just going to brief and share some clips. Day 6 of the NASCAR antitrust trial slowed the pace but deepened the tension. The courtroom focused on cross-examination of Race Team Alliance Director Jonathan Marshall and the testimony of economist Edward Snyder, while Judge Kennebell grew increasingly frustrated with delays. Key developments on Day 6. Jonathan Marshall's cross-examination. Marshall concluded his testimony, walking to the timeline of NASCAR's 2021 charter agreement. He acknowledged that while some teams viewed the deal as coercive, others saw it as a win for stability. Economist Edward Snyder's testimony. Snyder, serving as the plaintiff's expert witness, began presenting economic analysis on NASCAR's charter system. His testimony focused on whether NASCAR's structure restricts competition and harms teams financially. Cross-examination was not completed, and Snyder will return on Day 7. Judge Bell's frustration. The trial's slow pace prompted Judge Bell to extend court hours to 5:30 p.m. for the remainder of the week. He admonished both sides for excessive objections and delays, signaling urgency to move forward. Atmosphere in court. The day began with nearly an hour of objections before the jury was even seated. Media attention remained high, but a lack of star witnesses, like Steve Phelps, Richard Childress, or Jim France, made Day 6 feel procedural compared to the fireworks of Day 5. The tension between teams and NASCAR continues to build, with economic testimony now at the center of the case. Takeaways. Day 6 was slower but critical. It laid the groundwork for economic arguments that could define the trial's outcome. Upcoming witnesses. Steve Phelps, Richard Childress, and Jim France are expected soon, which will likely reignite courtroom drama. Judge's warning. The extended hours show the court's determination to keep the trial on track. Day 6 may not have had the star power of Michael Jordan or Heather Gibbs, but it was pivotal in shifting the trial toward economic evidence and systemic analysis. The next sessions promise higher-profile testimonies that could reshape the narrative. Before we begin, please subscribe, like, and share this video with someone interested in this story and court case. Stay tuned for Dale Jr.'s and Kelly's perspectives in the final segment. And don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comments below.
Do you sense that the plaintiff might be playing, up with they feel like they're in a really good spot with the way they are positioning themselves in terms of the questions they're asking, obviously the people they're bringing up, certain people they have not brought up yet, i.e. Jim France, for example. How do you feel about the plaintiff in terms of their optimism in terms of trying to actually win this case?
I think it's still a lot of optimism. It's a little bit hard for me to say since I was not present for any of the first week of the trial, so I could only go off of what was said by people that were there. But I still think there's a lot good optimism on that side, and I definitely think Kessler and that side, they're going with a strategy of going as slowly as possible so that they can use more time for their witnesses versus NASCAR's. So the U.S. Racing League was, an idea that the team's RTA had, about potentially creating, a second series or a series to rival NASCAR. And, they did some examinations of tracks in 2022, 2023, to see what would be available, what would be feasible, what would be realistic. And, the consensus that they came to is just, there wouldn't be enough, tracks for them to race on with the, the exclusive agreements that NASCAR has. There wouldn't be enough, larger ovals, super speedways, and so on, to make a schedule similar to NASCAR's.
Take it or leave it charter deal. What did he say about those particular events in terms of the timeline over those 2 days that ultimately, at this point, can be viewed as maybe one of the most, biggest days in the history of NASCAR, depending on the way this outcome of this trial goes?
So this is part of the cross-examination, and the defense was kind of able to give give their side of the events. So basically, at September 5th, 2024, that is when NASCAR began sending out the agreement to sign by midnight that night. By 6:22, which is 14 minutes later, Marshall was told that JGR, Hendrick, and Penske would be signing just 14 minutes after it was released, which I found, intriguing. That it was, done that quickly. But then again, when you have the threat of sign or else, can make that decision pretty fast. And, basically he also testified that, once he knew that those three teams had signed on to the 2025-31 agreement, that, the rest of the teams just didn't think there'd be a better deal given to them, given that arguably the three most strongest teams, at least the strongest for each manufacturer, had already decided to sign the contract. So NASCAR's defense, after, giving that timeline of that night, basically highlighted the differences between the 2020 to 2024 charter agreement and what the teams received last year compared to what they received this year with the new agreement. And the numbers they gave were that the teams received $340 million last year and $430 million this year for a gain of $90 million. And they ended their case with a text that Marshall sent to an unnamed Aspire executive on September 13th, 1 week after the signing, basically saying that, the agreement and what they got, that is a win in my book.
Okay. Let's talk about today. So it's all about the NASCAR trial. I've been following it closely. We are on the second week of this trial. It is a long one. Judge Bell has reprimanded everybody, and they've added 1 hour. They've added 1 hour onto these court proceedings because they just can't get stuff done. So instead of starting at like 9 to 5, they're going to go 8:30 to 5:30. That's 1 hour. So they're going to add 1 hour on because they're all taking too long. There's a lot on the line. Let me see. It says there's $365 million on the line. $365 million. So two teams said that, hey, if NASCAR goes bad, we'll buy it. What? So reported by Adam Stern. Adam Stern says there are two teams that would be interested in purchasing NASCAR if things went bad. And now, what does that mean? Just respond right here. And it's like, where'd you get the $5 billion from? Now, later in the day, Adam Stern said, you can tell when Adam Stern touches a nerve with his reporting. Because he said early in the day, two teams want to buy NASCAR if NASCAR goes bad. Well, then later in the day, it could have been 9 o'clock at night, Adam Stern reports NASCAR in the last 2 months has not want to sell. So it's like everybody knows what's going on in the media. It's like, hey, man, we don't want anybody to know we've ever thought about selling. But NASCAR in the past, around year 2018, I think they went to Goldman Sachs and just said, hey, if we wanted to sell, what would we be worth? Well, anyway, some economists come up with $5 billion. So what team would want to sponsor or buy NASCAR? I'm thinking it'd have to be Roger Penske. Roger's the most wealthiest one, or a team that has some funding behind them. They had switching gears now. They had an economist specialist come in on behalf of the teams. Broke it down with all this math that none of us can pretend to understand. You got to go through all these charts. But the bottom line is Michael Jordan and 2311, if they win the suit, if they win this, they want $365 million. Can you imagine that? This is why NASCAR is fighting for their life. And I can tell you, I've been told NASCAR is not having fun. They are not cocky, and this is serious stuff. And another thing I learned, NASCAR's Jim France, who owns NASCAR, he is not happy that this stuff came out in email form. He is not happy with what anything was said. So the survival of NASCAR is on the line, is the way they look at it. So yeah, okay. I remember 3 weeks ago, I said, are we going to Daytona? Well, it depends. I think everything will be for sure appealed. Whoever wins or loses, they're going to appeal. It's going to go to this court, then it'll go to the Supreme Court. It's going to go on for a long time. I can't imagine that there being a settlement anytime in the future. But regardless, the judge is going to rule what he's judging. And I feel like the judge is prepared. Like he already knows if NASCAR would lose, he's got to already know what he's going to say to NASCAR. I don't think it's a deal where if NASCAR loses, the judge is going to he's going to need time to think about it. I think the judge has had 9-10 months to think about it. Okay, let's see switching gears. This one here is crazy. As reported by Adam Stern, this AI, as you can see, everybody's getting frustrated on social media because, everybody is now going, is this real? Is this fake? Now you know what AI is. Respond right here. How many times have you got hoaxed and thought something was real and it's not? So this artificial intelligence is crazy. Well, as reported by Adam Stern, guess what's next? They might want to take these Formula One cars, another division, and do what they call it, anonymous, where there's no drivers. What the? That don't even make sense. You would have engineers, and they would control 6 cars with 6 engineers, and there'd be no drivers in them, and they would race each other with no drivers, just autonomous, whatever, anonymous, whatever. Anonymous means you don't know. Anonymous means I don't know. So there'd be no drivers. They'd have to create fans too, because there'd be no fans.
So
math is your thing. This is your show.
Well, so we get in there, and Judge Bell, no nonsense judge, as you guys know, we've shared here. He's pissed.
He's in a mood.
He was pissed.
He was in a mood. He was in a mood all day today.
Yeah, he's about done with all the shenanigans. I mean, he has been, but he's increasingly
he's
done.
There. We'll as we get to that, but there's various moments throughout the day today where it was very, very clear he was over this.
Yeah. So Mike says, "Remind me the protocol for filing objections in this case." And he goes, "Is it at 2:52 a.m.? Is that how we do it?" So then he's like, and then 6 out of the 7 objections get withdrawn. That's some nicely wasted judicial resources. Then there's another one at 6:50 a.m. that got filed. This does not make me happy.
That was a 15-page.
Yeah. He says, the court is not going to allow any more unnecessary documents that show minutia that the jury does not care about. That's one way he's trying to speed things along. He says, things can be done quickly and efficiently, although not to my observation. The sides go back and forth about what, and this was the tone setter, honestly, for the whole day, Jordan, because they're like, what words can they put on the slides and not put on the slides? Is it alleged anti-competitive acts? The headlines of the slides. Yeah, go ahead.
And they were showing news stories, for examples, and they're like, can we show the headlines of these news stories, or is it too salacious? Can we just show what's in the story? It was all of this minutia on words you could use, different, what word was acceptable, what was not, when could the word be presented?
Yeah, and they claim, the defense claimed, NASCAR claimed that last night at 6 p.m. that the teams changed one of the damages assessments, which is what we're going to be talking about damages a lot today, which is the money that NASCAR would have to pay if they lose this case, right? And how that model is calculated, right? And they feel like they changed the wording on these slides. They changed the way how they did it. NASCAR says that they would have completely done their expert depositions differently, and they would have questioned witnesses differently and all this stuff. And they said this is, quote, beyond sandbagging and fundamentally unfair. Well, the plaintiffs are like, this is much ado about nothing. We haven't changed the calculation. We just changed a word. And if you want us to change the word back, fine. This is coming out of nowhere. And Jeffrey Kessler is saying about Larry Buterman, apparently he has some legal argument he wants to make. He doesn't even know what it's talking about. So finally they get done with all this, and Judge Bell says, we've wasted half an hour of the jury's time because we went 30 minutes over when the jury was supposed to come in.
And they come in at 9.
And so then he also says, I will feel free to participate in the effort to get witnesses to answer questions today and for the rest of this trial.
Which he did. And we will give you examples of that as we go here, because he was very liberal with that today.
Yes, he's starting to butt in more and more to move things along when he doesn't feel like things are a witness is being evasive or whatever, right?
And even when he feels like a lawyer is asking the same question again and again and again, and he will cut the lawyer off and be like, "You've made your point. Can we move on?"
Here. Yes. First of all, we've been talking a lot, Jordan, about the baseline number that how much it costs to run a Cup car per year, right? Yep. The $20 million has been floated around. First, it was like we were under the impression that this was all the teams that said this. Then Steve O'Donnell, I think it was the one who said it was 5 teams. The numbers came from.
And there was an insinuation at some point, I don't remember who, but it was like mostly a lot of smaller teams too. And
okay.
I believe that's it. And Jeff's going to read them here. I can read them. There were 7 teams, and we're going to read the names here, and they certainly aren't small by nature.
Yeah, so these 7 teams that they got their numbers from, they protected their data, so they didn't know like who was from what team, I think, right? But like this represents 21 cars, and they are Joe Gibbs Racing, Hendrick Motorsports, RFK, RCR, Trackhouse, SHR, and 2311. So, and then Jonathan Marshall says this was actually a study to talk about cost for a car that could consistently run in the top 15.
Yeah, it makes it before.
So this is but I'm because we had heard that Front Row, they're only spending like $14 million a year to run their cars. Anyway, this is the kind of stuff that was being sort of picked at, right? A little side note here, unrelated to anything. We did find out today that pari-mutuel betting is being currently negotiated. So this is something that I guess both NASCAR and the teams are working on separately. The teams decided to join NASCAR. So again, this is unrelated to the trial itself, but pari-mutuel betting is like betting that's contained. So you're not betting. It's the sports book isn't setting the odds, right? Like the odds are changing when you're at a horse race track. It's changing, right? So you can envision that potentially they could have betting windows or some such at NASCAR tracks like they do at horse racing tracks. And then you could bet on drivers to like win, place, or show, something like that. And people could bet live at the track, bet against other bettors, and the odds would be changing. That kind of thing. I'd imagine is what they're talking about.
And quickly here, another Judge Bell note. Some documents were being submitted, and one of the lawyers was trying to read it, and Judge Bell quickly snaps, "I can read."
Like, NASCAR wanted to be able to negotiate with different teams on different terms. So they wanted to give the big teams certain terms in the charter deal, and they wanted to give the small teams certain terms. And they did get to do that. There is nothing in the charter agreement that says all teams will get the same terms. So what happened ultimately was some of the smaller teams were holding out, but when the bigger teams signed it, they felt like, okay, well, now they're not going to get better terms than us, so they signed it. So now these are the best terms we're going to get too. But there's still the teams never got in there and that NASCAR can't give a better deal to different teams. They can give one deal to Hendrick if they want. They can give one deal to Rick Ware if they want. But ultimately, the teams that signed it, I guess, all got the same terms that day.
All right, so here we are in the middle of the show, and I wanted to talk a lot about the lawsuit going on that NASCAR and 2311 with Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan and Curtis Polk are currently all in the middle of, and wanted to bring Kelly in, my sister, who a lot of people might consider one of the best business minds in the sport. And I think for the most part, both of us kind of unbiased because we don't really have a charter and we're not in the Cup Series, but we've been around this thing for a while. But I think too, like a lot of people, we've learned a lot of things. It's been uncovered and come to light in the middle of all of this. And it's been really compelling, man, but I don't know about you, but it's been dominating my thoughts. If I let it, I think there's a lot of concern about what the end result of all of this is going to be. Yeah. And, I don't think anybody really knows, I guess, how this might all kind of shake out. And it feels like when the trial began, there was this sort of ebb and, there was this sort of idea that, they're, looks like they're winning. Looks like this team's taking the lead. Looks like it's in their favor. And for the first week and continuing into week 2, basically 2311 and Bob Jenkins, they have been in position to make their case, and then NASCAR will be given the same opportunity in the back half of the trial. But and the trial's running long. They wanted it to happen in 2 weeks. It looks like it's going to be more like maybe 3, even 4. The judge is very frustrated over the process and how slow this is going. I'm curious just about that, because the trial begins and 2311 is making their case, and they had Denny on the stand for a day and a half or so, and then going through the rest of their witnesses, and they're just kind of they're not slow playing it. They're just taking their time and doing this thorough sort of process. And as the frustration grows, and the judge is asking them to sort of pick up the speed, does that is that a disadvantage, I suppose, to NASCAR, who's got to follow up, right? Because now they're in the position of feeling rushed, pressed, to sort of get all of the information that they have. I'd be curious to see how aggressive they are in trying to make their case.
Yeah, me as well. It seems like to me, NASCAR, that's kind of been the theme from the judge, is like all on NASCAR and a lot of pressure on NASCAR. Yeah. And so then that's more so they're sitting there thinking what mistakes they don't need to make, you know, in the midst of it. And I've never been in a trial, and I don't know how long these things are supposed to last, but I would want to argue my case just because that's how I am, as long as I could, but I respect, the time of everybody too, between the jurors and everybody that are involved. But, this is a big deal. And to your point of it dominating your thoughts, I don't know where I land on everything, because like every day something new comes out, some more interesting information. Yeah. I know from the very beginning, I'm sad that this is the position that the sport is in, and I'm sad for the sport and the fans, and all the people that have supported NASCAR and been a fan all these years for us to get to this point. The things that have come out, I can't believe that either side would want to come out. I feel if they knew all that.
I feel exactly the same way. I'm very disappointed.
Yeah,
I am.
Yeah.
I'm very disappointed, and in both sides.
Yeah, not
honestly.
One side or the other. I haven't really taken sides. It's just the whole thing is very disappointing.
And I will say that I'm extremely disappointed that we are in this position, and I don't see how any of this is going to. I don't see really how any of this is helping us as a sport. But so I'm kind of frustrated at both sides, but I also feel like I can agree with certain aspects of both sides of the argument. And, we can get into that a little bit. There's just, not in no certain order, but there's been a point made about NASCAR owning the racetracks, right? And that NASCAR, I don't know that, 2311 and I don't know that they want NASCAR to sell their tracks. I don't think that that's really, I'm hoping that's really not what they're asking. I think that I think they're using that against NASCAR, because NASCAR did tell some other people that like Marcus Smith and so forth, you're going to have to sign an exclusivity deal because we don't want anyone else running a race before we come into town, right? And that's not unusual in other sports and arenas and so forth. And, but I think, there's been something made about NASCAR owning the racetracks, and that they, the way they've, sort of restricted use of those facilities is helping the argument of 2311. But I think, it's kind of got to be, it's a be careful what you wish for kind of thing, because number one, like, no one's building racetracks. Building a racetrack today is not a financial, success. running a racetrack today is not a lucrative operation. No one is clamoring to go out there and build any type of racetrack, rather big or small.
We tried to do that once.
We did. We tried to build a track in Alabama.
Yeah.
I mean, we were down there in some meetings and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. But no one's in the business of owning racetracks. Nobody's going to be standing on the steps waiting for those tracks to go to the highest bidder. Nobody's. And if NASCAR and Marcus doesn't own these racetracks, right?
Who does?
Who does?
Yeah, who does?
They're going to turn into developments.
Yeah.
They're going to be turned into, Amazon centers and,
Yeah.
They won't be racetracks. And what'll happen is in 10 years, we'll be racing on a bunch of street courses,
Yeah.
and road courses.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And so everybody kind of be careful around that because we need, as unique as it is, we need NASCAR to run the tracks, own the tracks that they own, right? Because it's really a lost or a dying sort of business model,
And like to your point, like to play devil's advocate to that, if it's a bad business model and it's bad on tracks and so on, I kind of liken that to like farming.
Yeah.
Like all the farmland being, and everybody's like, it's hardly sustainable unless you're this huge farming operation to stay in business and farming. And people are upset because farmland's going away. And every time we look around, there's a high rise and there's condos and there's apartments. And that's the same thing you're saying. It's
the land is valuable.
It's more valuable than the business model.
Yes.
So I hate to hear like it's a bad business model. It can be better, but the way the world is going, there's just more valuable things. I mean, think about the money that people are offering for data centers and all these different things that are coming out that could be in place of a racetrack.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
You go to,
it's really an economic thing.
Look at what Fontana got them.
Yeah. Fontana, Chicagoland.
Yeah.
You go over to Nashville Super Speedway. That track barely made it back onto the schedule, but if you go out there, all around is all those fulfillment centers and so forth.
Yeah.
Where they sold off part of that land. But, it's just the land's more valuable as something else.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
And so if NASCAR or anyone really was to, for whatever reason, start selling off racetracks one after the other, they're going to be gone and disappear. And we're not going to have these big ovals and short tracks and all this stuff. We're going to be running on purpose-built, street courses and doing all this other silly stuff. And the sport would change the identity and the sport would just change incredibly away from what we've known. But that was kind of one thing that I found interesting. I do understand why they're making the argument that, hey, NASCAR's tried to control these tracks and not allow other people to, that's the argument that there's, NASCAR's restricting the use of the facility to keep and quell any other competitor from creating, right? I understand.
But people do exclusive things all day long.
I know why they're making that argument, but be careful, right? Because if there's a way, if it ends up going against NASCAR and the court or whatever decides that they can own these facilities, that's we're going to be in.
Yeah, we're going to be in trouble.
Yeah,
for sure.
That'll not be very fun. The other thing that I thought was interesting was the driver ambassador program. Bob Jenkins testified that each team pays NASCAR $300,000 for this program. NASCAR pays a little bit as well. And basically, it is what used to be the Winner Circle program. If you won a race, you were then put on the Winner Circle program. The team would become part of the Winner Circle program. You would get more money in the in the purse. So if you were to if you ran a race, you ran and you hadn't won, you got a certain set amount from the purse. And if you win a race and get on the Winner Circle program, that was good. That was huge for your team because you were going to just every week bring in more money from the purse being on that program. But the driver, in turn, would be required to go do X amount of appearances out of market. So basically, they would be able to send you anywhere they wanted.
Usually
right?
for media or to promote the upcoming races.
That's right. We'd get sent into town early, a couple days or a week before the race, do local radio, TV, do a little tour, get a key to the city, something silly. And yeah, it was like a whole day. And then we'd go home. And I remember those. And this is exactly that, you know.
Yeah. I didn't think about it that way. It is that.
Yeah, it is that.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't, you know, I am surprised that the teams have to pay
Yeah.
for that, you know, some sort of, I'm surprised that they have to
Yeah.
put anything.
Everything
in
that I
that
had always
program.
heard is that, you know, NASCAR was paying, well, there's a point system basically,
Yeah.
and then there's a payout at the end of the year. Right.
the way
right.
it had been, the way that I had read it,
That seems like an easy compromise they could have made.
yeah, the way that I had read it was, man, NASCAR's got this new program.
Yes.
They're gonna, you know,
Incentivize
the drivers.
Yes.
I had no clue the teams were putting money into this.
Yeah. Me neither.
I would say that shouldn't be the case. You know, I could
Yeah.
argue the teams don't need to be putting money into that. That if NASCAR wants to incentivize the drivers, that's on them.
Yeah. And that actually makes more sense from one of the deterrents of that program that I heard in the very beginning, that teams were upset because
Yeah.
this was going to take we already do that for the sponsors, right?
Yeah.
You already go places for the sponsors, and this was going to kind of take their drivers' time away from that and then need to be spread. It makes a little bit more sense now that
I'm paying you to
why
take
they were upset,
Yeah.
right? Because now I got to pay you
I'm paying
to take
you
my
money
drivers.
to take my driver away.
Yeah.
And he's
Yeah.
gone on a Tuesday when
Yeah.
I need him over here doing something for my partner.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
You know, so that was pretty interesting. The a big conversation around SRX, and I gotta be honest. Look, this shocked me. I want to say that look, I'm a big fan, and I think I'm a good friend with Ray Evernham, right? And when he started talking about SRX and what he wanted to do, in his mind, he wanted to create or recreate IROC. And the initial idea of SRX as a series that would go into these local markets, and you would bring out these retired guys and some unique personalities.
Different forms of racing.
Yep, different forms of racing, and offer up a car to the local hero, right?
Yeah, I love that part.
The original idea of SRX, in my mind, was a good idea. I will say, though, I wasn't interested in it personally.
And it morphed. Like,
I know,
you've seen.
but out of the gate, I just didn't have the bandwidth I didn't get into it.
I watched it. I liked it.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan.
Yeah.
I didn't really watch too much of it. I would see some clips and stuff and go, yeah, okay, that's cool. But it was kind of a made-for-TV deal, and, you know, I don't know. I just, I didn't get into it, and that's fine. You know,
okay, yeah.
Personally, I wasn't that, I certainly am so surprised, taking, you know, no offense to anybody out there that was SRX fans or anybody that worked in the series. Tony Jr. worked in the series and all kinds of cool people, but I wasn't into it. And to hear that they were even remotely the least bit threatened is so
wild,
surprising to me, because they're this giant that's NASCAR, and SRX is just this little thing. You know,
it would take years to recreate what NASCAR is.
Yeah, and they were like, there's 12 cars, right? They're just barely getting by financially. They're tearing up so much. They had no idea he's going to tear up all that.
Yeah.
And, you know, in the end, they couldn't make the money work. SRX went away because it's expensive to operate.
Yeah.
And the money, you know, the network, the viewership numbers didn't justify the TV contract, and the TV contract couldn't afford the series. And so it just financially didn't really work. You know, I am surprised by some of the comments that I read from from O'Donnell and a couple other people about, man, we got to put an end to this, or we got to go take a look at this. And
again, to me, it's such a little piece of the pie.
Yeah. Why are we worried?
I think the ratings is why they were worried, though.
I don't care. I mean, people were going to be curious. And
what were the ratings comparative?
Listen, they were.
So a redacted name in these text threads said they outrated Xfinity and trucks last week, and it isn't some local dirt track stuff.
Yeah, and but
it was on ESPN, I think. Like, it was big network.
I know, and I'm not alarmed at all by that. Now, I also am not the one that's having to go out and try to secure a new TV deal. And if I've got to walk in the room and go, man, I'm trying to sell a truck or an Xfinity package to a CW, and they're like, yeah, we're not going to pay you, but why X, Y, and Z, because SRX is doing these numbers and they're getting this, it sort of sets the value, right? Mm-hmm. Is that the concern, you think?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I've always been told from a business perspective, competition is good for you. Competition keeps you keen. It keeps you thinking about what's next, and all of that. And so, I get that, but there's always going to be, I get Travis's point, there's always going to be something that is going to outdo you somewhere, somehow, something, this past weekend, the Gateway Dirt Nationals, highest rated show in Flow Racing, wouldn't Cars Tour, wouldn't late model NASCAR or something of that nature want to be the highest rated? Absolutely. Yeah. What do we need to do different?
Yeah.
I don't know. So that's how you got to kind of look at it.
It gets you,
it gets you thinking.
It gets you working in that direction.
Yeah. Why does that work? What's so awesome about it? You know? So
I was really surprised by that. I never saw no disrespect, but I never would have worried or considered SRX an issue or a problem.
Yeah.
And I would have looked at what they were doing, and to your point, Kelly, I would have look at what they're doing.
Really figure out a way to work together.
Why do people like it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can we blend?
Can we work together?
Can we work together?
Yeah. What can we do? Yeah.
It was interesting because, it did morph. You had drivers, Denny and Chase and Blaney and all these guys. But they were going over there. Chase goes over there to race with his dad, right?
Yeah.
Have a little fun.
Yeah.
Blaney with his dad.
Not something you can do in a NASCAR race.
Yeah. And they were getting paid to go out there and do it for a little bit of money. I get it. I just and I talked to some of the Cup drivers the current drivers that had went over there and tried it, and they were like, yeah, it's fun. It's all right. The cars, the cars are, as the season goes on, the cars are kind of getting banged up and used up, and it's a little bit harder for the cars to be even, and you kind of don't know what you're getting into, whether you're going to have a really fast car, maybe one of the cars is not doing everything right. And that's tough. That's why it was tough for the series, I think, because over the course of the season, just general wear and tear and all of those things, it's no different than your kind of pay to ride go-kart track down the road. You're going to show up, you're going to look at the carts sitting there.
You're going to watch the first race and see which one's the fastest.
Right. Yeah. I want to get on a good one.
Try to get in that
Put
one.
me on a good one, but it was fun and entertaining and it made for TV. And I was just really kind of surprised by that. There were a couple of lines, too. Steve O'Donnell's quoted as saying, wait till Junior says he is running an event. I was asked to run SRX and didn't really have any interest in doing it. We were getting involved in, we had our late model team, and I was getting back into driving late models. I was going to, if I knew I only had enough bandwidth to run about 3 to 5 races a year, I was going to do our Xfinity
SRX
race.
Wasn't going to be it, right?
Yeah, and I was going to run some late model cars.
Yep.
Steve says they will go to North Wilkesboro with SM and Junior if we're not careful. We need to be the first back. I'm surprised.
Was that before North Wilkesboro, maybe?
It had to have been before.
Okay, before.
It had to have been before North Wilkesboro. This was, if I had to guess, most of these text messages are anywhere around 22, 23.
Yeah.
So we had just taken, maybe we were just.
Were you just June 29th, 2022.
Is that the first Weed Eater?
No, I think we ran. When did we run the first late model race there?
Let's see,
2022.
25, so 23.
23, maybe
3, 2.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Anyhow, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
I want to, listen. There's a lot of stuff about NASCAR and in all of this that I don't know. I don't know everything about how they run things, and I certainly didn't know how they felt about some things, and how these text messages have unveiled some things. But I'll tell you one thing I do know is that North Wilkesboro came back because of Marcus Smith.
And Dale Jr.
Well,
but yes, give yourself some credit.
I don't feel comfortable doing it. NASCAR. Of course, when they didn't
put anything into making a comeback for it.
They didn't play any role.
Yeah.
Now they have to go. when Marcus comes up and says, man, I've got this track back together.
Yeah.
I want to put it on the schedule. They've got to, go, okay, good.
Yeah. What's the consideration, right?
Yeah. But look, NASCAR never was going, guys, we got to get Wilkesboro going.
Yeah.
Physically, they were never, I don't, and I don't want, this isn't a knock to them. This isn't like this isn't a knock to them. They shouldn't take this as an insult. But Wilkesboro is back because of everybody else.
A lot of hard work and investment from SMI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The government, our locals, government, and the town, a lot of volunteers, 20 years of volunteers, people like, just even keeping the grass mowed for 20 years. All of those reasons are, the fact that they just kept the track in somewhat reasonable shape to even be considered to be brought back. Those people should be commended. I mean, we can go on about this, but I know that O'Donnell's like in his text messages saying, we got to get back to Wilkesboro, but they weren't actively like boots on the ground part of the reason why Wilkesboro is back. And so,
concerning what would overshadow them from coming back, because they're the ultimate thing.
I know.
So what is going to, to his point of we need to be the first back, like, what really could go there as the first thing and overshadow the biggest form of motorsports?
Look, I was happy to be part of Wilkesboro in its return, whatever role I really played in all of that. We went there with our Cars tour, and we got a ton of grace from fans. There was just a lot of that wasn't working. It wasn't, that traditionally, if you were going to bring NASCAR in, it wouldn't, you'd had to fix, right? But we got a ton of grace. Fans were like, I don't care. I'm happy to be here. I want to see a race. And that night was a dream. It don't even feel like it was real. And so, I think Marcus saw that, and then me and Marcus was like, "Holy, we do need to bring this back." What was it? Damn, And so me and him go up to, me and him are out in Raleigh and talking to the government and talking to local officials, and we're doing everything we can. We met with the state officials, and trying to do everything we could, and. And then he brought it back. Marcus brought it back. And so, I was surprised. I wasn't surprised to read about North Wilkesboro in their text messages. I was surprised to hear how they framed it. Like, we got to get back there. That's what we got to do. That's how we beat SRX.
I think it's hard for us to understand the threat, because like when we look at our own business and everything that we do and how we're made up and what our dad always looked at and all the legacy of our family and all, I don't think we didn't ever like look at things as like a threat and deter and badmouth and talk. We look at it like, how can we make this better? What can we do together? That kind of thing. And that's what's like the most surprising thing to me is like,
I agree.
And that's what I go into things with, that mindset.
Bowman Gray's mentioned in there as well. And we went out to the LA Coliseum. I love the idea on paper, but we should have never, like, that's the part about NASCAR that's frustrating for me, is that we eventually get to where we're supposed to be. But like
we try a bunch of things.
Try a bunch of things that we don't need to try.
That don't pan out.
But we eventually like, this was the answer. It was Bowman Gray, because like literally Bowman Gray is part of our, that's a part of the original seasoning that created NASCAR. Like Bowman Gray is like part of the very beginning of our sport. Like, it's like Wrigley Field, and, what were we doing out in L.A. at this Coliseum that we had no, personal connection to, but we eventually end up where we belong, and where we should be. And so I don't hate the idea of the Coliseum. I really don't, but like we literally had that right under our nose. And now, here we are, and so and same thing with Wilkesboro. Like Wilkesboro should have came back way before it did, right? And it just took a little bit of, inspiration to sort of help some people understand why that needed to happen, it's here, and here we are. The next thing I kind of wanted to move on to was 2311's investment in the sport. Kelly, you and I had some conversations, and one of the things that I feel like that if you want to look at why 2311 is doing this, look at the investment. It's insane. The building, $45 or $35 million for the shop, all the money they've spent to acquire charters.
Right.
They have built an insanely respectable operation in a very short period of time. A lot of teams, like Bob Jenkins, for example, a lot of teams sort of have to have this slow churn, right, to eventually possibly build up into a reasonable operation. Spire's a great example of that as well.
Yep.
But Denny and them came in, they put the money on the table, and they're all in. That is probably the foundation of the reason, why they want to go to court and try to get a better deal, right? They've put all this money in. They're doing everything they can to be a great, representative of the sport, and they're looking for, that same support coming back, and they just don't feel like that the charter agreement is fair.
Right. Yeah. So it's interesting. And I need to even give more thought because this thought just popped in my mind. But, obviously, yeah, we talked about the investment. So they've sat here and they've made these investments under the business model that they knew was the business model, and under the business model that Denny Hamlin's known ever since he's been in the sport. And so, here he has brought Jordan in to the business model. They've invested all of this stuff. And then, not that it's all of a sudden a problem, but I think the real problem is the lack of permanency for the charter.
Yeah.
In the same breath, and I said this to you earlier, is what is it ultimately that they want? And, is it a certain level of investment return that they want? We were talking about one of the points that, I thought was really interesting is there's a lot of conversation about NASCAR making $100 million last year. Well, every business that I know of is trying to be in business to be profitable. If you're not in business to be profitable, then I don't really know what you're doing in business. And most businesses want to make 30 to 50% return. So I don't know what $100 million is of what. I don't know the revenue number of NASCAR. If it's 10%, it's not that much revenue, even though $100 million is a lot of money, but not in the scheme of the business that you're running. If it's 50%, then hey, give up a little bit. But I think it's that permanency in terms of the 7-year agreement. So they want to try to get more if it's going to be permanent.
Yep.
So this every 7 years gives them the opportunity to negotiate for more. So I'm just really curious, like where, I've seen the conversation with Jordan, when he sold the Hornets, what'd he make? $400 million? I don't know, something crazy. Is that what they're trying to get to when charters are only trading for, $45 million right now? I think it's crazy that a charter trades for $45 million on a 7-year not permanent agreement, which is crazy. We've talked about that, in our whole couple of years of trying to acquire charter. It's like you don't want to invest that much money when in 7 years you don't know what it's going to look like. So I get that part of their argument. I get that part of the argument. But at the same time, they've made a lot of investment. Bob Jenkins has made a lot of investment, and he's been doing it for I don't know how long he's been in business, 15 years, and made the investments year after year after year, and hadn't closed up or hadn't said a word or, whatever it is, right? So same thing for our business. We're in the same boat. We make a little money some years. We don't make a little money some years. And we love what we do. And, it's what we know. Yeah. It's our platform. It's our brand, and we, if we wanted to do something different, we would, right? To go out and make money elsewhere or whatever. So yeah, it's really interesting what the ultimate goal is that they're fighting for.
Well,
I know what the lawsuit says they are trying to prove, but I don't know what their ultimate goal
owning,
is.
Being an owner or participating in motorsports of any kind, has never been a profitable, business. Racing, we always have known that to go to a racetrack, whether you're running locally or whether you're running in, the top ranks of NASCAR, you're going to spend a lot of time pooling together resources financially to enter the car and go compete.
Mm-hmm.
And your plan is that those resources that you piled together are going to help you pay for the process, and you're going to walk out of there without owing any money.
Yeah.
Not walking out of there with a 30% profit.
Right.
Right? That was
It's never worked that way.
It's never worked that way.
I mean, I remember Dad talking about, 1998 with the AC Delco and different sponsorship models and all this kind of stuff. It's never worked that way.
It has never, ever worked that way.
Yeah.
And and so Michael and Curtis walk in and pull the curtain back and go, damn, why are y'all doing it like this? Well, it's kind of been the way it's always been. Racing has always been this way. Racing in any form. Racing in any series.
Yeah.
Motorcycles. I don't care what it is. This is how it's always worked. It's never been something people have got into it and made a lot of money. And so, on the competition side.
Yeah.
But they look at it and they're like, well, we see an opportunity, right, to turn this into something that could be, and they look at stick and ball or basketball and say, well, there's franchises, there's value, that there's opportunity to really kind of make this similar. And I think that's the general idea. But I want to have the conversation around all of that. Landon Castle brought up some points during his podcast. He has a podcast with Parker Kligerman called The Money Lap. They're good dudes. Landon's a thinker. Parker as well. And they're interesting to listen to. But anyways, the general idea, why can't it be free enterprise? Why can't all of the money, right, that's being dedicated to the teams through this charter agreement, why can't that be dumped into the race purse and the teams go out and compete for the money through performance alone, right, to become profitable? Landon said that it's not on NASCAR to have to guarantee that every team in the series is profitable. Right? There's no business model in the world that exists like that, right? Or everybody would just own NASCAR teams. Yeah. And so why isn't there a pathway through performance at the racetrack, on the racetrack, where NASCAR would be responsible to reward the teams that are actually out there performing? Let's remember that the charters were created strictly as a guarantee to get your car in the field, right?
Yeah.
There were a couple things going on in the sport back then. You had field fillers and starting parks that were sort of,
clawing up some of the
they were there to run a few laps and park the car and grab the money from the back of the purse and go home. Yeah. And that was a business model that they made work, right? And they were going home and making a couple $1,000s a week, and
they weren't making an investment like some of the other teams.
Yeah, the other teams are out there going, well, damn, that ain't right. So NASCAR said, and you had teams also trying to sell sponsorship, and they would sell the sponsor to, let's say, selling a sponsor to Arby's. Yeah. And they're like, we're going to run 36 races. And Arby's is like, you're going to be in all 36 on the broadcast? Well, we hope so. We hope we'll qualify into all of them. Well, what do you mean you hope so? And so
Gave them some security.
Yeah, that was the reason for the charter. Here's your guaranteed spot. Go sell that to a partner, and we're going to eliminate the starting part because we're not going to pay very well outside of the charter positions, and that's what it did.
Yeah.
And now here we are with literally, pretty much every race, only 36 cars showing up to running as an open team.
What I do. So I use this website, similarweb.com. They have a 7-day free trial.
The charters weren't ever intended to be a franchise. They call them charters for a reason. They didn't call them franchises, right? And they wanted to, I think, NASCAR's intention was to sort of, steer away from it, being a franchise model.
Yeah. So initially, when they were trading charters back and forth for $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, it was kind of like your guaranteed start.
That's it.
Which was
like buying point. It was the
buying
same
the points.
as
That's
buying
what I was
the
going to
points.
say. Right. So if I got a sponsorship from somebody, I don't mind spending that money to then guarantee myself because then my sponsorship works out or whatever. And then that goes against. That goes for what they're saying. Performance. Even thinking about the starting parks and the other teams, if you're investing and you're making more money and you're finishing the top 10, you're making more money than the starting part is investing. So that's a performance. That's a pay on performance.
So if the identity of the charter remains as nothing more than a guaranteed entry into every
paying
single.
$35 million is a lot for that.
Well, if that's what it is, if it's let's say that if the charter remains nothing more than a guaranteed entry into a single event, I think that the values remain where they are today.
Yeah.
All right. What the teams have recognized is that if those charters were to become permanent and therefore basically a franchise, the values are well north of $150 million. So you're sitting there with a charter,
executive,
right, that is worth, let's say, 25, and by the stroke of Jim Francis' pen, it will be now $150 million, right?
The scenario, and we're going to be talking about all that.
If you're a charter owner, of course, you're hoping for that to happen. And I believe, secretly, even the people that have signed the charter agreement are hoping that some way, somehow, that in the end, these do become permanent. And that's really, honestly, the question that we have to ask ourselves as a series.
Yeah.
That is the ultimate decision that I think comes out of this whole trial.
Yeah.
Right? There'll be some other little nuances of, well, will 2311 and Bob Jenkins be rewarded some damages? Will this little ever get pulled? Will this little thing get changed? Will somebody lose a job? Will this person get replaced? All those things may happen, could happen. But ultimately, I think what we are deciding is, do the charters become franchises? Do they become permanent? And then they'll be realized in new value at north of $150 million.
Welcome on into
that is probably what
sixth
Michael and Curtis would love, because they come from a model
of this
out of the NBA that is similar, right? And
joining me is the boss
I think
man,
that ultimately
on,
Friday's
edition.
That's what. And if
I want to know what he thinks.
that
He
happens,
goes by that guy,
like
and that
there
guy
is no going back.
Did you?
Like it
I wanna
changes
ask you, what did you think
the
of my
sport
intro
forever. You'll basically
on,
have
Friday's
36
hello,
franchises.
welcome on into this episode
However
of
many
Bring the Heat with
cars
Trey
will
Lyle.
start a race.
I'm Trey Lyle.
They'll be
joining
the
me
franchises.
is
They'll
the
be
boss man,
owned
Bring the Heat with Trey Lyle.
and
I'm Trey.
valued, and they will then sell and
hello,
trade
welcome on into this episode of
from
Bring the
one
Heat with Trey
entity
Lyle.
to another
I'm
over
Trey
the
Lyle.
course of decades and
joining me
centuries,
is the
however
boss
long
man,
this goes.
Tom Bowles
And
at
there'll
NASCAR
be
Bowles.
a
Tom, before we get to
gigantic
Steven, I do wanna
barrier
ask
of
you,
entry,
what did you think
right?
of my intro
So like as
on,
we've known
Friday's edition
racing
when I,
for
the
75
Michael
years.
Jordan intro. What did you think of it?
If you wanted to build a cup
I
car
was
and show
pumped.
up at a race and try to compete,
I
you
wanna
did,
know what he
and
thinks
yeah, you're
when he
you know
goes by that
probably
guy
not going to
and
go
that
all
guy
that
is
well. You're
playing.
going to compete
Did
against
you
the
see?
regular
I think it
teams, and
was,
that's what it was. But
Jeff
you
Gluck
could.
got the video. Someone got the video.
That'll
today.
be
Steven, you might be.
that'll
able to
be
answer
going
this better 'cause you were
forever.
there.
I wonder
The
if
guy was
on the
playing a
flip side of
different
that
song,
though,
and
it
he,
could
like,
lift
shook MJ's hand today.
Xfinity,
MJ
it could lift
chuckled and,
trucks,
shook
it
the
could
guy's
lift
hand.
cars
it would.
He at least
you know,
acknowledged
would
it
it?
today.
Like I'm just thinking
But,
about
yeah.
basketball.
Joining us
Like
now-
I hear
Go
you.
ahead.
Like
Listen, I
man, the
love
barrier
people
of
that have a
entry
goal
for
and a purpose
36
in life.
teams with all these
Kudos to
people out
that
here
guy
racing
that
and
said,
all
for
these
2
tracks, you
weeks,
feel like that
I
would
don't
go
care about the
away.
result
Like
of the
what's the
trial. I'm
point?
just
Why do
gonna
you need
sit
all
there
that
and
just
play
to
the intro music
have
for Michael
36
Jordan.
drivers?
That's what I'm going to do with my life.
Premier
What do you mean?
drivers.
Every
You know, why do
Monday
you
through
need
Friday
all these short
at 8
tracks, all these
a.m.
other
or whenever
series
Michael
if the
Jordan
premier
comes in?
thing is
No, no, no.
36
That's
to
his
get
goal.
there?
That's what Michael was doing
I
well.
feel like
Well, something
that
we're gonna get to.
if
I'm thinking about basketball and college
Joining us now,
basketball and then your ability
Yeah.
to play in high school and so on and
Steven
so
Stump,
forth. Like
Steven
you have to have those
_Stump. Steven,
steps.
I listen.
Your first
That
day
is
doing
what's
this.
at stake.
So
I'm gonna start
does
with
it
that.
improve the steps in
Long
our
day.
sport?
It will.
First day for you.
All right.
What was
I
it
don't
like?
I feel like
you got to
I
soak
feel
in a
like
week's
that.
worth of information, and now you were actually there
I don't
at the
think
trial.
that-
What was
I don't
your
really
first
have
day
a
like,
preference.
which ultimately was day 5 of this trial.
Of which direction this goes.
Day 6. You're right.
I agree. Because I think as it's going, it's not good for the teams.
Yeah.
Right, it's not. If the teams need more money.
Yeah.
So I would support the teams getting more per season from NASCAR
hello,
for their
welcome on
charters.
into this episode of Bring the Heat with Trey
I
Lyle.
don't know if
I'm Trey
I
Lyle.
fall one way or the other on
joining me
permanent, but once
is
they
the boss
are
man,
permanent, they then become
Tom Bowles at
franchises.
NASCAR
They're no longer
Bowles. Tom,
charters.
before we get
They go
to
from
Steven, I do wanna
franchises
ask
worth
you, what
around
did you think of
$25
my
million
intro
to charters
on Friday's
worth about
edition
$150
when I,
million.
you
And
know,
so
the Michael
overnight.
Jordan
And
intro,
so
intro at
I'm just
NASCAR
saying,
Bowles.
like,
Tom, before we
once
get to
you
Steven, I do
become,
want-
once they become a series that has
Hello, welcome on into
36
this episode of Bring the Heat with
franchises,
Trey Lyle.
they are
I'm Trey
now
joining me
way over here
is the
on an
boss man,
island,
Tom Bowles at
even more than ever unrelated
NASCAR Bowles. Tom, before
to
we get to
Xfinity,
Steven, I
truck,
do
and
wanna ask you,
everything
what did you
below
think
it.
of my intro? What did you think
ARCA,
of-
regional,
Life
local.
every Monday
It
through Friday.
becomes
this
this
so I'm gonna start with that.
anomaly
Long day
because
First day for you, what was it like?
Your opportunity to get across that bridge. That bridge.
Huge,
you
don't see a lot of basketball, football franchises change hands.
Right. Well, but I'm just saying, even as a competitor, that bridge.
Exactly.
The bridge gets a little longer.
Well, that's what I was trying to say. Is like in our sport, there's only 36 opportunities for a driver to make it. Yeah. On the basketball team, there's how many ever people, times 20 franchises or whatever, right? So it's a lot. That's why I was saying, does it make the rest of the ladder stronger because people would stay in trucks longer, or they would come through Xfinity, or they would. Does it? I don't know. I don't know the answer.
Well, I just feel like that it's.
I don't like the barrier of entry to Cup because I want to compete in Cup.
I know. Like I wish that NASCAR hadn't have taken the hard stance against starting parks. I know it wasn't. I know it wasn't fun for them to have guys come in, run a couple laps, and walk out with a check. But you would have eventually maybe had a team out of the Xfinity Series like ours, or there's several others in the Xfinity Series that would have actually showed up and tried to actually compete, right? Run all the laps.
Now it will turn it into a money game. Yep. I mean, who has $400 million to buy the New York Yankees?
Yes.
Not very many people.
Yeah, and so think about what that world looks like, where you've got 36 charters, franchises, 36 franchises permanent. You got a car that is hard to relate to. Like I look at the next gen car. Like I've stood beside race cars all my life. And I can walk out in that garage and I can look in under those cars and I can identify most of the parts and pieces. And the cars that I race in the Cars Tour, all similar parts and pieces that I see in this 1979, 1980 Monte Carlo sitting here, or that 2025 Xfinity car, right? It's very similar. And we then, with the next gen car, shifted into this whole nother, level of technology. And I look at that car and I go, damn, I don't know. I know what I'm looking at, but I don't know what I'm looking at. And so,
I guess the thing
every time they pull a layer off of the next gen, I go,
I thought there was like
it's overdone, over engineered. It's just a mess.
Like that,
and
there actually wasn't many.
I don't
have an exact count.
I don't know what the word. I've been looking for this word.
Maybe 5 to 7.
I would say like I don't really connect, or I don't like.
Testimonies across
I don't look at that car and go,
pretty straightforward.
Damn, man, that's badass.
It's a hot rod, yeah.
And so think about a world where you're running cars that are not as easy to
still pretty high on both
embrace.
Sides, especially
if you're a car culture kind of person. It's tough to wrap up your arms around that car.
Seems high amongst the court of public opinion,
and you become a franchise where there's a it's pretty much a fixed model, and I just feel like that it separates itself from really what everybody else is doing in the world of stock car racing, right? And I don't know that.
Do you sense that the plaintiff might be
a pathway toward,
up with they feel like they're in a really good spot with the way they are?
I don't know that that's a pathway toward
the questions they're asking,
turning on and turning everybody on.
Certain people
I think
getting everybody excited, getting everybody to the racetrack.
Yeah. What
how do you feel about
what keeps coming to my mind as you keep talking about it and giving these thoughts is that we ultimately just need to fix the business model.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot about
that's what they're asking for.
Yeah.
Because if you make the teams healthy and you make them profitable and all of that, it is about the charters. There's a whole nother conversation. But ultimately, we're just talking about the business model.
Yeah.
That's what they're talking about. Like, make it more like it doesn't. It's helpful for the team to be worth $100 million. Great when I go to sell and I built something. But for the 20 years I'm going to operate it, what am I going to make? Think about SHR. They probably didn't really make that much money once they sold their charters.
I wanted to ask
because they spent a lot of money and probably went years without a lot of profit. So did they? How much money in turn did they really make?
Got out without too much damage.
Right. What did they? Yeah, they get out kind of level playing field.
That's racing.
And I think another thing I know, and I think that's what they're fighting for is let's make it look different. How can we make it look different? How can it be more profitable for the race teams? And also our sport, because of these charters, and it was before, we're in a period of change for team ownership and stuff too. You've got the legacy teams like Hendrick and now Roush Kozlowski, RFK and Penske and so on and so forth. And then you've got, the new teams like Trackhouse, who like 23XI, who are coming in doing it differently. But these teams have all these legacy costs and all these things, that more employees, more this, more that, because they're doing it a different way, or they're manufacturing and they're doing all kinds of different things, So we're really in a so to that point, it's really hard to know what the financials of teams are because they're all doing it differently. I mean, and so some teams say they're profitable that are some of the newer teams, and then you got legacy teams that probably aren't nearly as profitable because of all the legacy costs kind of things that are involved and stuff, So it's interesting.
You'll have a company that's been in this. You'll have a team that's been in this sport for decades that has acquired 500 employees.
Similar to NASCAR.
You bring in a car that doesn't need as many people to put it together. And you could probably trim down your workforce, but you refuse to, right?
Everything let's start with the race team alliance. Obviously, that was
a hard decision. Yeah, it's a hard decision to cut 30 or 40% of your workforce.
But then again,
so you try to make it work.
You have the threat of
I just was curious,
and basically,
why,
once he knew that those three teams had signed on to 2025 to 31 agreements,
why couldn't it be more of a free enterprise model?
Good point.
Where
the three most strongest teams,
the team's got to go out there to get the money,
had already decided to sign
and
contract.
I know that sounds. That's probably the owners don't love that idea.
Well, they don't love that idea because marketing has changed so much. So, it's
help me understand how that marketing plays a role.
Social, digital marketing and content-based marketing is so much cheaper to do these days than the old buy your television commercials, get in the magazines and newspapers, go on, all the different TV shows.
But if I could say, hey,
but the cost of our racing has not had that same shift, right? So let's just, I'm just going to use numbers. It was $1 million to do all that, and it's $100,000 to go digital. Well, our costs need to change similarly because I can't get $1 million from my sponsor. They're like, I want to give you $100,000 because I can do this over there for $100,000 and get the same amount of people. So I'm not going to give you $1 million, right?
But I mean, if NASCAR were to fill the purse,
that's what I'm saying. They got to make the business model better, ultimately.
Instead of saying, man, I'm just going to give you a $12 million check for being a charter guy,
right?
You go out there and you run top 15. Right. I'm gonna get you $15 million. You're gonna get $15 million in purse,
and
you're gonna get your charter money that way. Why doesn't that seems to be how racing has worked for
it has. I mean, and even a lot of agreements, we now put in more incentivizing, whatever the right word is, from our sponsors to make the championship make a championship win or whatever, so sometimes that's, how we get to the dollar. So it is performance based. They want to see their car up front.
It feels like that.
The trial about whether
this isn't the only NASCAR's. This happens in this happens in other sports as well, where you sort of everybody sort of players,
examination that you wanted
athletes,
to bring up. Obviously, we went a lot
coaches,
over it on Monday.
Everybody's got to get in their money up front.
Like the Economist was obviously the 95% or the bulk of the day
and that is that's kind of why I like the Xfinity Series, or I like college football, or I like where I know that they're working toward a performance reward, right? And they're striving to get to another level of competition. And so I feel like that while I want the teams to get their money, I do, I would rather them get it through. I would rather at least be under the guys that I'm seeing them get it by racing, right? And doing things on the racetrack. And that team's rewarded financially, and they're a financial success because they ran in the top 5 all year.
I think they'd probably be fine with that if the foundation was XYZ, so that you
from a
What do you
very,
mean?
We're somewhat
very
profitable.
peaceful.
The bottom line, you know, that you
Caribbean,
can make, I'm just, you know, using
whatever you
numbers.
wanna call this
If it's
ocean
$1 million that I need to be somewhat profitable or cover my cost, but I have the opportunity to make 40 million if I win. Right.
Yeah.
They need that, you know, the floor they need to cover, and then they can work from the floor up to make more money.
Yeah.
Right.
So
and I think they're probably saying that the floor doesn't even cover what we're trying to do here,
I agree.
Right.
So if NASCAR needs to, you know,
they need to fix that.
If NASCAR, if let's say the teams are getting 400 million, and they want 600, right? Why don't NASCAR just take, you know, if NASCAR is probably going to have to compromise in all of this at some point, they're probably going to have to compromise in the end. I would put my money on NASCAR having to raise the money they're giving the teams per year for charters. I mean, if they just took that big pile and put it in the purse and said, you're going to get the money, but you're just going to go race for it. And
figure out how to get it.
The optics of that's even better.
Yeah.
As a race fan, like I'm trying to figure out how to get me back to the racetrack.
Yeah.
Right. How to get me excited to be there. How to get me excited to watch. How to have a purpose of or a reason to pull for this person, that person, because you know personality and a cool
There's too much parity almost.
Yeah, a personality and a cool looking race car just isn't enough.
Yeah.
You know, I need to feel like there's like a grit to it. You know, and if everybody shows up and they're already know what they're getting, what are we doing?
Yeah,
are we just racing for pride?
So
you know, that's kind of one of the things that I found interesting, and I was glad that Landon. Well, I was glad he brought that up, you know, and he's got nothing to lose.
No, and he's a good solid thinker.
I don't even know where we're at. That's the beauty of it.
I don't see that model ever coming into the sport, but I mean it.
And it's too much.
It's basically how we did things forever, but there just wasn't. NASCAR just needs to put more money in the purse.
Wow.
Had they done that instead of created the charter deal in 2016, we might not be here.
We're headed to Grand Canyon.
Or went out and did some of them crazy things that we were discussing, like the Coliseum and whatnot, right? But, you know, ultimately, I think you said it earlier, we don't know all the ins and outs, right? So, I mean, some of the discussion of the lawsuits, that how much of a big deal that the TV rights of playing and what they want, and like all the decisions. So, you know, there's two sides to every story, and this one lands somewhere in the middle.
I agree. I think it would be... NASCAR's going to have a new playoff point system next year.
You gotta shut the door here. They make you see here.
Probably going to make what would amount to a significant shift. I feel like that.
All right.
I doubt that we'll get 36 race full season deal.
I got my notes.
It's probably going to be
what are you doing, Queen?
A playoff of some sort. But
look at her.
More than likely, I'll be satisfied.
As long as it's just not one race.
It won't be one race, I'm pretty sure. I don't actually know exactly what it's going to be, but I feel like I know what I was in all the meetings and all the conversation over the last year.
So,
and I feel like we're going to land in a good spot. But
trial
man,
today
I'm sitting there watching this trial go on, and I'm like, you know, everybody's going to walk out of this with some battle scars.
I want you to see her.
More than likely, you know, NASCAR's going to have to give the teams a little bit more money. NASCAR's also taking a beating publicly in terms of perspective.
Yes,
and that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
And so it would be a good opportunity for them to.
So it's all about the NASCAR
bring
trial.
back the full season, 36 race schedule.
It closely. We are
as an olive branch
on the
for the race fans that they pissed off.
This trial. It is a long one. Judge Bell has reprimanded everybody.
Summarize
and they've
your point of view
1 hour
and mine.
onto these court
and
proceedings
I'm happy to let you go first, or
done.
I can go in terms of what you would like to see.
9 to 5.
And it doesn't have to be specifics, but how do you want this to kind of?
I mean, ultimately, I'd just like to see compromise on both sides. I'd like to. You know, I think, you know, we didn't even talk about some of the text messages and things like that, and some of the things that were said. I'd like to see some consequences for a lack of respect that people had. I think that's important.
2 teams.
And I'd like to see, you know, I'd like to see compromise. I'd like to see an understanding from the teams of
two teams.
NASCAR and everyone
$1
else,
million.
Speedway Motorsports,
So,
SRX, Ray Abraham, Dale Jr., Cars Tour, whoever it is, that we're all working for the same thing, and that's just to keep the sport relevant, to keep it what we know it, to invest in it. That's what everybody's doing. And we all need a better understanding of that, and a compromise for the teams that, like you said, what are we racing for, and where's the floor to make it a good business model, and the decisions that come out of that. So what I don't want to see is
NASCAR. If things went
negativity
bad.
for it to go rock bottom,
Just respond
for
right
people
here.
to lose their sponsors, for people,
where'd you get the $5 billion
for fans
from?
and sponsors, and
later in the day,
public as
Adam
a whole
Stern
to
said,
lose confidence in the
you can
sport
tell
and
when
what we
Adam
built
Stern,
and what we've all known for all these
touches a
years.
nerve with his reporting.
Would just hurt my
he
heart
said early in the
tremendously.
day,
So hopefully, I wish they would have
NASCAR
done
if
this
NASCAR
before the
goes
trial
bad.
and come up with something
Well,
that
then
they can
later
come
in
up
the
with,
day,
because I think
it could have been 9
we already
o'clock
see
at
some
night. Adam
damages, and I
Stern
hope they just
reports,
don't get too much worse.
Yeah, I can't disagree with any of that. I think that was well said. I was very disappointed in some of the comments made about individuals in the sport, particularly Richard Childress, a guy that's just done so much. I know there's a lot of different opinions about Richard out there in the fan base, but I know what this guy's sacrificed and
some economists come up with
and
$5
how much he's
billion.
invested himself and his life in the sport. And to your point, I would like to,
NASCAR.
I would like to see some.
I'm thinking it'd be.
I would like to figure out whatever it is,
Roger's the
whether
most
it's
wealthiest one, or a
repercussions,
or a team that has some
there's
funding behind
that just can't go
Switching gears now. They had an
touch.
economist.
That can't go unanswered.
Just can't be swept under the rug.
For sure.
Broke it down with all this math.
None
of us.
I was interested to hear and to learn how Steve O'Donnell and some other people really on the executive side were actually going to bat for the teams.
They want
that was nice.
$$365 million.
And,
can you imagine
and good
that?
to see.
Very encouraging.
This is why
for
NASCAR's
sure.
fighting for their life.
To see them,
and I can tell you,
with some common sense and trying to make things, just trying to find a middle ground, which gives me hope that there is a way for us all to kind of come back together. Because really, in the end,
and another thing I learned,
we've got to go to Daytona.
NASCAR's
and Daytona's going to be here before you know it. I saw Gluck.
He is not happy.
Tweeted yesterday or the other day. It feels like Daytona's.
He is not happy.
Years away. It will be here.
So
quickly.
Larry Mack knows how quick it is.
It'll be here quick.
Survival of NASCAR is on the line.
And when it's here, it's like Christmas. You got all your damn shopping done.
Okay.
Are you ready? Because you better have your
3 weeks
under
ago,
the tree.
I said, are we going to Daytona? Well,
when Daytona shows up,
I think everything
we've got to be all back together.
Appealed.
We all got to be back on the road, pulling this thing in the right direction.
Court, then it'll go to the Supreme Court.
That's
going to go on
that's
for a
the
long
teams.
time.
That's 2311. That's NASCAR. That's everybody. Sort of.
There being a
I don't know how we get there that quickly. But we've got to go into Daytona all going,
I feel
all
like
right, man.
The judge is prepared.
We all figured out
if NASCAR
how this is going to go. We've all gotten what we've gotten out of this trial.
I don't think it's a deal where
we all got to, we're now back to working together.
To think about it.
To get down the road. The trial will be appealed more than likely. This will go on. This disagreement will continue. This isn't going to be over in February. But we do got to go race. We do got to go be successful. We do got to go compete and try to carry on.
By Adam Stern.
The series and the sport.
Everybody's getting frustrated on social media.
To your, I feel like
reported by Adam Stern. This one here is
somehow,
crazy.
some way, it's got to work out.
Yeah.
Somehow, some way, it's got to figure itself out.
And through everything that you just said, it's got to be transparent and authentic to the fan.
Switching gears,
because otherwise, you can't have no sales pitches.
This
you can't
AI,
have no.
As you can see,
knowing that
frustrated on social media.
Knowing that all of the things that have been discovered in text messages and so forth, I don't think we can go back. I think we're transparent. I think we're there.
I think we're there. How many times
have keep it up?
68 days.
68 days later.
It's not. So this artificial intelligence. It's crazy.
I don't believe
artificial intelligence.
I do want the teams to be profitable. I do feel like that
artificial intelligence is crazy.
I know that Penske and Hendrick and Gibbs do not want a cost cap, I don't know how you govern a cost cap, honestly,
Thought
but
something was real,
I
and
feel
it's
like
not. So
that
this
might be something we
artificial
should consider in
have
the
you
future. I know it's not
hoaxed and
the best. I know that Rick Hendrick would not like me to say that, but I do
thought
feel like
something was
that
real, and it's not.
a
So
cost
this
cap is something that's got to
artificial
come in at
intelligence
some point.
is crazy.
If you can do a cost cap and then you can raise what you're giving the charters per season, and if they need to be permanent, man, there's just once we make the choice that they're permanent, they're permanent.
That's it.
That's it.
That's right.
And I hope that that's the right
Save
choice,
time
because if it's the
creating
wrong
content
choice,
and generate a
you
high
can't
Well,
fix
as
it.
reported by
You can't
11
fix it.
Labs.
Yeah.
So,
Change the way you record.
I don't know where they're. I think that honestly, I would have preferred. I'll go specifics. Give the teams more money
one
per
cars,
year.
another
Give them
division,
something that they're
and
very
do-
happy
and
about.
what they call
Not
it,
just a tick
autonomous,
more, not
anonymous,
just a bump.
where
Give
there's
them
no
something
drivers.
that they're really happy about.
What the-
Set
that don't even make
a
sense.
spending cost
You would have
limit,
engineers,
and
and
then
they would control
sign.
six cars with
Do
six
not make
engineers, and there'd be no
the
drivers
charters
in them,
permanent,
and they would race each other.
but
with no
sign
drivers.
a deal
Just
where it's
autonomous,
long
whatever,
term
anonymous,
and it's
whatever.
a percentage.
Anonymous means you
Not
don't,
a
you don't
fixed
know.
number.
Anonymous
It's a
means
percentage
I don't
of
know.
whatever the
So
TV
there'd be
deal
no
is.
drivers.
So, to like
They
Michael
have to
Jordan
trade
and
fans,
Denny
too,
both
'cause there'd
said,
be no
"Look,
fans."
we'll do a percentage, and if it goes up, we all win. If it goes down, we all go down."
That's my best line on that one.
And I think
That's a good idea.
I don't know why that didn't happen. I don't know why that wasn't something that didn't happen. I'm sure NASCAR had a purpose or reason, but I don't know what it might be, because if it goes down, we're all screwed anyways. So,
race.
but I would have done that. I would have
Downtown
said, "Hey,
St.
let's
Louis,
just fix
that
it
dirt
at
race.
a percentage, and it
Highest
is what
ratings
it is, and you're
in
going to
flow
get
history.
more every year." And I think
There it
that
is,
would have
everybody.
gotten
The
them
dome.
down the road
The date is
and
perfect. It's in the
out of
middle
the
of December.
courthouse.
It is, everybody. In flow history.
So there it is. I'm hoping.
So
I think that
there it is,
the
everybody.
other thing
The
I did want
dome.
to say, I just remembered.
The date is perfect. It's in the middle of December.
I do want
Nobody's
to see
doing
the
nothing.
France
They're
family
watching
continue
the
to run
dome.
the sport.
And just for that,
I think that the
everybody's
France
going,
family has
it's gonna be
earned what
advertising.
they got. They started this. I've got the
Snowball Derby controversy.
notes from the
Ty
original
Majeski
meeting in Daytona
should have won this
in
race.
1949.
They
when they all
ruled
got
that
together.
he jumped the start.
The hotel.
I've got the
And
note,
they
like
gave
I've got the
Stephen
word,
Massey
every
the win.
word
Now,
that was
here's
said,
the-
every decision
the
that was
kicker.
made, every
So
comment
many years ago,
from
within the last
anybody.
5
I've
years,
got the whole
Massey
thing
won this race.
from the whole
and
meeting.
in tech,
And when you
they said he was
read this
illegal because he had
thing,
a little bit of.
I mean, it is 75 years ago. But when you're reading it and you're kind of understanding how they formed the sport,
had a different material that
and then
maybe
you
they
see
shouldn't
Bill
have,
France
and
Sr.
won a little part of the break.
take it from that
So while
moment
Stephen
forward, and
Massey
then Bill
straight up won
Jr. and
the
Dad,
Snowball
Bill
Derby
Jr.
so
were
many
very
years ago, he
close,
got
and
DQ'd.
I got to know Bill
And guess who
Jr.
they gave the race to?
really well.
That's right, Ty Majeski.
Then we
So
had
this year,
the Brian
Ty
France
Majeski wins
phase.
the race.
as tough
And they
as that
deemed
was.
That Ty Majeski had
but
an
they,
illegal restart, and guess who?
The
they
France
gave the race?
family,
They give it to Stephen
they
Massey.
built NASCAR.
These two, they can't win.
And
it's crazy. That's
and I just don't believe that.
And
If you
let me
build
tell you,
a
I'm
build
gonna
a
give you my
company or
opinion
you
on
build
the Snowball
something
Derby.
that it should be taken away
To
from
me, it's
you, or
neither
somebody
here
should
or
come in
there.
and tell you
This or that. They were playing
what
games.
to do. And so,
Stephen Massey's the best in the business.
what I would want,
holding back on restarts. And
Jim to do is
we all know
to
that
be able to
Ty- we all know how
compromise and be
Ty
able to get
Majeski
to
is
a
on
good
starts.
middle ground with
Forget
the
all
teams.
that. Forget all
Maybe
that.
he's from what I've read in
this
these
Snowball Derby is marred in controversy.
court records and so
Chase
forth.
Elliott
He's been
won it
pretty
1 year,
stubborn,
but he was DQ'd because he had tungsten.
I like Jim. I think
let me
he's a
see,
great
I have
man.
other ones.
I like the France family. They've been great to me.
It's
I
just
think
always
they've done
drama.
an
And then
amazing job
Massey
putting
with
us
his-
in a hell of a
his
position as a
magnesium, that's
sport,
the word
and I
I'm
would
looking for.
I would trust
Magnesium,
them
little piece
100%
apart in the
moving
break there.
forward beyond this
The
trial.
Snowball Derby has a problem just ending with the
and
real
so,
winner.
how can you
Always
have
some little
that
bullshit
and
that
then
really
all
don't
of the
matter.
compromise where the teams are happy?
You're
I
not
don't
supposed
know,
to have
but I
tungsten, but
honestly
Chase
feel
Elliott
like,
had a piece of
and this ain't no bull, I'm
tungsten
not being a
and
smart ass.
whatever. Come on.
Honestly feel
I know,
like I've
whatever,
seen
but
this.
It's just always some bullshit.
I've seen this for years on
Snowball Derby
my
has gotta get
timeline.
a run
Anytime
going
there's
in the
kind of a
future.
big old
Just
disagreement
with a
or
winner.
uproar, there's fans on
All right,
social media
everybody.
that'll be like,
That's a lot of
"They ought to
truth.
get Mark Martin to run
Just
the sport.
with a winner.
They ought to get Dale Jr. to run the sport." I'm telling you, if me and Kelly were in those meetings, I feel like that we could have made a difference. Because reading all of this that went on over the last couple of years, I mean, it's
just a level
it
head
doesn't
common
it
sense.
isn't that hard. hard.
It's not rocket science.
It isn't.
Yeah.
And so I just feel like, golly, man, it would have been. It just seems like this was completely avoidable. And again, going back to our original comment when we first sit down, it's disappointing. Yeah. But I think there's a way out.
Let's hope.
Yeah.
I think if both sides don't come out with lessons learned, then shame on them, right? Because there should be some lessons that are learned in this whole thing, or it was mute calls to go this far.
Well,
so we'll see.
We will see.
Welcome to the Inner Circle. This isn't just a membership. It's a mission. You're supporting forensic truth, mythic blends, and ceremonial broadcasts that honor every moment. Members unlock exclusive enhancements, behind-the-scenes alerts, and direct access to the pulse of Timescape news and leading sponsor, Gold Rush Fever Specialty Coffee. Join us and help shape the signal. We thank you, and as always, stay safe. That's the latest from Timescape News. We're live. We're watching. We thank you. Subscribe, like, share, and ring the bell so you don't miss what breaks next. Stay with us. We appreciate you. And as always, be safe.